Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Mad Science Lab on the Fantasy Football Universe. I am Aaron St. Dennis at FF Mad Scientist on social media, joined today by Coach Steve. You can find him at Coach Stephen P on Twitter. He is joining me today to talk Miami Dolphins. How's it going, Coach?
I'm doing pretty good. I already did one podcast today. Now I'm on another one, talking about my favorite team at all time. So it's exciting.
Which one did you do today?
I did my own podcast, the Fantasy Coaches, small plug-in. But now I get to talk about my Dolphins, which I love even more. So
It's amazing that you say that, talking about being on another podcast. My first guest of the day, Yvette, she posted on Twitter that she posted 3 pictures of her 3 outfits today for doing 3 different podcasts. And I replied with, I'm at the point today in my podcasting where I can't remember all the guests who've been on my show today. That's just today. You're 9 out of 10, I believe. We got one more after you. They're only released one per day, but it's been a long day. And I'm getting to the point where I can't remember everyone who's been on the show. I was sitting there trying to roll through in my head who the 8 people before you have been. And I think I named 5 of them. So, yeah, I'm getting a little loopy, so I'm glad to have someone who knows what they're talking about with the Dolphins, because at this point I may have no clue. You got a little subtle plug in there for your show, but before we get into it, why don't you give yourself a full plug and tell everyone where they can find you?
Yeah, absolutely. And I appreciate it. Again, you guys can find me over on Twitter or X at Coach Stephen P. I host my own podcast, The Fantasy Coaches, and I do a little bit of writing for the Dynasty Nerds and for some Dynasty context. So if you want to find any of that, you can find it right over there at Coach Stephen P.
Dynasty Nerds. I was there briefly, but couldn't stay. I had a conflict of interest. Them and another company did not like me working for both places and had to choose. So.
Oof. I understand
that. Not great. So we will get started here with the quarterback room. And by God, this better not be a quarterback competition, because they have Tua starting off. He is was QB 10 last year, QB 13 off the board this year. We've got Mike White, who always seems to be a pain in the ass for some starter. Seems to be the plague for the starter. Every team he goes to, the starter goes down. And we have Skylar Thompson, who I liked in his rookie year. I don't think he really ever lived up to much, but late round pick. What can you expect? The quarterback room here, more specifically Tua. What are your thoughts here?
Yeah, so with Tua, I love him for the Dolphins, but for fantasy, and all that stuff, it's a little complicated. I don't know. Are we talking fantasy or just real life? I'm sorry. Fantasy. All right, I just want to make sure.
I don't care about real football.
I like it even better.
The numbers.
Yeah, so for fantasy, Tua is a very boomer bust quarterback. Obviously, there's he can't win the big games and that he fails and doesn't perform in fantasy, at least, and against tough competition, which, yeah, it's definitely happened this year. But with Tua, you kind of have to take the good and the bad with him a little bit there, because there's going to be games where he's going to put up, 25 plus fantasy points in any given week. And he showed us that, especially in the first half of last year, where he's able to do that. And his roster, if anything, got better than it was a year prior. I mean, in addition to the tight end, wide receivers, running backs, they improved that offense in total for the weapons. But obviously late in the season, you saw the struggles with him not really doing too much. But I think that might turn around a little bit this year and kind of go back to more a median, where you saw the rushing touchdowns. The Dolphins had like 20 plus rushing touchdowns this past season. That means Tua didn't get a chance to throw a touchdown, and he had a very low touchdown record this past year, especially in that back half of the season. So you should expect Tua to probably see an increase to 4 or 5 more touchdowns this year in this offense. And again, there's going to be some bad and good with it, but for fantasy, you should expect another at least top 15 season out of him.
I was going to say, I think he's a better best ball quarterback. And I was thinking back to, I play in the Frankenstank Listener League through Toilets to Titles. And so it's some funky scoring, but basically the gist of it is, for each, milestone you hit and for each touchdown you throw, it stacks a little. So, it really rewards you for big games. So I found in one game, he'd put up 80 points for me, because it would be that's the scoring there. That's a great game. But so it'd be a Tyreek and a Jalen Waddle game, and he'd have, 5 touchdowns. He'd put up 80 points, 300 yards, something like that, and you'd run away. And then the next week, the Dolphins would score 50 points, and he'd put up 3, because it's 3 Mostert touchdowns, 3 A-Chain touchdowns. So it's like, okay, just because the Dolphins scored 50 points this week doesn't necessarily mean Tua put up 50 for me. So I think he's definitely a great best ball quarterback. he's someone for me where he's in that in super flex more so. He's in that range where I like to get my number QB1 early, and then I wait a bit on QB2 because I like some of the later ones where I'll just take free Matthew Stafford, Aaron Rodgers, whoever. But lately there's been a little bit where they've been punted, the group of Herbert, Dak, Kyler, Tua. When those guys are the ones who fall to me in the second and third round, I say, well, screw it. Maybe I won't punt quarterback here and I'll stack 2 quarterbacks. And I love the upside of Tua. Like I get a couple of teams where I was able to stack Josh Allen with Tua. I've got Mahomes with Tua. And I'm just like I said, and then there's some of it is Dak. A couple of them are Kyler, some Justin Herbert, but those are the guys in that range where they're not normally my QB2. And I don't normally look for a QB2 that early, but in that case, he's one of the 4 where I will step up and make a move and just say, screw it. I'll just shoot for the upside on quarterback here.
Absolutely agree.
All right. Getting into the running back room here, one of the more exciting running back rooms in the league. We have Devon Achane. I know I said Achane last time. I think it's just programmed into my brain.
That's okay.
Those first 5-6 weeks of Achane, it's just with the off season. I haven't said it. It just reset to Achane. But that's Achane. RB22 last year had some injury issues. ADP is RB9 this year. That's a tongue twister. Raheem Mostert was RB2 last year. I got him in a bunch of leagues in the 15th round. That paid off. He's going as RB30 this year. Obviously the age. Obviously everyone's in love with Achane. He is a great value. Jalen Wright, I love coming out of Tennessee, going off here as RB44. I think he's a great long-term play, but I didn't love this landing spot. Don't get me wrong. I love the landing spot for fit and scheme and potential. I don't love that it's a really deep depth chart, especially when you add in there's also Jeff Wilson and there's also Salvan Ahmed here. So what are your thoughts on the most crowded running back? Like you've got Wilson and Ahmed here could be a 1-2 on the Giants very easily. Like
that's
it's
true.
A loaded room.
Yeah, no, I love this backfield here. I really do believe, unfortunately, Jeff Wilson will probably get cut because I think Ahmed could play a little more special teams for this unit here. But, everyone's hyped on Achane, and I get it. The upside we saw on him on the field when he was playing was fantastic to watch. Obviously, he only needs a few carries to really get things going in fantasy. But I feel like he's going a little too high for me. Like, I probably won't have a lot of Achane. I just feel like the value for a guy who's going to get limited touches at times is kind of scary. He's going like you said, in the top 3 rounds of ADP right now. It's like, I don't think I want that in my running back.
Second round.
Second round. Okay. Second round. Yeah. Okay.
RB9. So.
Oh, RB9. Oh, wow. Yeah. So I don't really want to go for a guy who is going to be limited on his touch basis. Like he's going to have a couple games where, he'll see a little bit more here and there, but I'm kind of concerned about the touch factor in his play there. Like, I feel like Raheem Mostert's still the better value that you want on this team here, where he's going ADP 30. Like, I still feel like he's going to be the RB1 for this team. He's still going to be the goal line back for this offense here. Like, as long as he's healthy on the field, he's going to be the RB1 for this team here. Again, we can't predict injuries. He's older, but as long as he's healthy, he's good. And I feel like if Mostert goes down, they're not going to turn the ball to just Devon Achane. So I feel like that's what people might be thinking here, taking him early because he's going to have high upside already. And if he gets the starting job for Mostert, if he gets hurt, then he's going to go through the roof. I really believe Jalen Wright would get a lot of work in this offense if that is the case here. And Achane kind of keeps his role, but with a slight increase. So I think Achane could be a bust where he's going in ADP. And I think Mostert's a better value right now. And, Jalen Wright, if it works out for him, he could be a deep sleeper this year. So
I don't think this ADP for Mostert will hold, nor will the ADP for Achane. The only people really playing right now are us degenerates, and it's a lot of dynasty. So if I know one thing about dynasty, it's all that matters is age. Nobody gives a shit about anything else. So like you said, Mostert's available probably 5, 6, 7 rounds later, and this is probably 50-50 if you break down the fantasy points at the end of the year. They're both going to split it. So I'm taking Mostert 5 rounds later. I like Achane. I don't particularly have a lot of him. I like some of the other players. Like he goes in the range of Kyron Williams. I know Kyron's also got some competition. I just prefer Kyron there. I think he's got less competition, but even that, I don't typically have running backs in that range. I'm normally shifting to wide receiver.
Great.
The interesting one you said there was Jeff Wilson. I may start taking some last round shots on Jeff Wilson in hopes that he gets cut and goes to one of these teams like the Giants that need him. Because if I can get Jeff Wilson in the 22nd round of Scott Fishbowl and he gets cut and ends up on the Giants, I could have a useful player, because we've seen Jeff Wilson can do it when he gets the shot. And Miami runs the same basic running scheme as the 49ers, and both teams have seen that they burn through running backs because basically they just send them full speed ahead right into it, and they burn them out quickly. They go through tons of injuries. So maybe that's why there's 9 running backs on this roster, because at some point they're going to need another fast guy to pick up the ball.
That's true.
There was
Chris
Brooks and Alex Ingle, but one's a fullback. So
yeah.
But moving on to wide receiver here, we have the high-end Tyreek Hill, finished as 2 last year, wide receiver 2 off the board currently. Jalen Waddle finished as wide receiver 30, going off the board as the 20th. OBJ newly acquired. He's 87th overall. Malik Washington, Braxton Berrios, Taj Washington, River Craycraft, Eric Ezukama. Basically, for me, this is Tyreek Hill. I'm taking him as probably my wide receiver 2 off the board in redraft. Waddle is a guy I have quite a bit of shares of. It's saying he's 20th wide receiver off the board, finished 30 last year and kind of a down year. 20th off the board, I feel like he's going a lot later than that. I've had a lot of drafts where I've gotten to the point and I'm like, I need a receiver, and it's like, oh, I guess I'll just take Waddle. He's there, and it never feels great because I'm not huge on Waddle, but I've just had a lot of them based on his ADP. How about you? What do you think of this receiving room?
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously, I feel like it's one of the best in football. Obviously, Tyreek Hill is a first round pick in almost any situations for me right now. I feel like, and you can make an argument that he's the wide receiver 1 off the board. You really could. The upside that he offers in this offense, like he's gonna see 140 targets again. He's even talking about trying to get another contract with the Dolphins, which would be great. But for fantasy, he's going to put up big numbers each and every single week. And if you saw last year, he had very few down weeks. Like you can rely on him each and every single week to put up elite fantasy numbers for your team. Now, Jalen Waddle is a guy I actually really do like to bounce back this year. I mean, last year he did deal with some injuries that kind of plagued him in the season here. You obviously saw that the rushing touchdowns of, like I mentioned before, 20 plus rushing touchdowns, like again, 4 or 5 more touchdowns that could go towards Hill and Waddle pretty easily. And Waddle could have himself a pretty decent year coming this year. Like I see 1,100 yards and 6 touchdowns for him. Now that puts him in the top, 18 wide receivers, top 15 wide receivers in fantasy, right there pretty easily. And if he can stay healthy on the field, he's just as dynamic as Tyreek Hill. He has the speed to match up with anybody on the field. And so, like, if you can't get Tyreek Hill, don't feel bad because you can get Jalen Waddle, 20th ADP overall. So, like, I would much rather go that direction if I had to. So I think the value is great for Waddle right now.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I have a ton of Waddle, and it's not just redraft too; it's dynasty, and he's still 25 years old. So, not sure why. Like, we have Hill was awesome last year, but he's going as wide receiver 2 behind CD because everyone's saying, well, he can't. CD has no competition, and Hill has Waddle, but yet Waddle's ADP is not going up any higher. So it's like Waddle's good enough that it keeps Hill from being the 1 overall, but. Waddle's not very good. Nobody wants him. It's like, I don't understand the logic here.
I'll take him.
I'm all in on Waddle at that cost. Let's see. Tight end room is not nearly as exciting as the rest of the lineup. We have Jonnu, who was tight end 1923 this year. Durham Smythe, Jody Fortson Jr., and Julian Hill. What are your thoughts here other than, Jonnu, maybe that desperation injury pray for a touchdown and maybe he's useful?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of how I see it. I had somebody on one of my shows the other day and they were hyping up Jonnu Smith. I just don't see it. Like, I don't see him being a consistent fantasy option for us this coming season. Like, he'll have a couple big weeks here and there, have a long catch and a touchdown, but like, I don't see the target share being enough where he's seeing 60 plus targets this year Like 60 might be the ceiling for him if he gets to that this season because of what Waddle and Hill does. And now Odell Beckham is on the team there. And I just don't see Jonas Smith being a reliable option. He'll have a couple, probably could be a decent bye week fill-in if you need him. But like I don't really see him as a long-term or a reliable weekly tight end that you want to start.
Okay, so I agree with all of that. I'm going to bring this up here. So head over to Fantasy Football Universe if you want to check out the team pages. That's what we're looking at here. This roster, offense and defense, they are powered by Fantasy Pros on our site. And I bring that up because what I'm thinking here is they have the ECR, the ADP, the best rank, and the worst rank. I'm not all in on Jonnu, but I would love to find the Fantasy Pros analyst who has him as tight end 60. Can you name 59 tight ends in the NFL, let alone 59 that are better? Like, I'm not a Jonnu guy, but there's no way he's the 60th best tight end in the league. Like, what the hell are... No.
Someone's not updating their rankings. That's what it is.
Yeah. It's like I'm not all in. I thought I was out, and he's probably tight end 30 for me or something, or 27. But tight end 60, that dude's way out.
Way out.
So, all right, moment of truth. Based on what we just looked at in their ADPs overall, roughly, who is a target for you on this team for a redraft, and who is an avoid?
Yeah, I'm going to go Jalen Waddle. If I happen to go with running backs, my first two picks, or if you want to take, the tight end, or if you're being risky and taking quarterback, even as your wide receiver too, I like Jalen Waddle in like the third round range. Like I feel like the upside for another wide receiver one season is there. It's not very often where duos get both wide receiver one finishes, but it happens. And I think in this offense here, Jalen Waddle has the upside to do so in the third round that many other wide receivers may not.
Agreed. Who are you avoiding?
Probably Devon A-Chain. I mentioned already, it's just way too high for value for me for a guy who's going to be limited on his touches. Yeah, sure, he's going to have a big game here and there. It's going to be like, wow, why isn't this guy getting the ball more? But there's a reason for it. He's just not big, and he's a guy that can thrive off limited touches. But I don't want to rely on limited touches for my RB2, potentially even RB1 if you went that direction.
That was the target and avoid for me as well. So that brings us to the final part of the show. We're going to run through the schedule here. I will name the game. You tell me win or loss. I'll write it down, and we'll come up with a record here. So week 1, home to the Jaguars. Win or loss?
Well, I think we're home. I think we can beat the Jaguars, personally. I feel like their offense is still trying to figure out what their identity is, and I think Miami has the right situation week 1 to kind of use their speed to kind of just win the game rather than having a real game plan against the Jags.
Still suffering from Urban Meyer PTSD. Week 2, home against the Bills.
Week 2 is going to be interesting. It will kind of see what Bills team is going to come up this season here. I'm going to give the slight edge to the Dolphins because it is a hot, sunny day in Florida still. If it was at Buffalo, I'd probably say a loss, but we are home. I'm going to give us the victory on this one here, but I think it could go either way pretty easily.
Week 3 at Seattle.
So this one, I feel like I'm going to be really upset with. I think we lose in Seattle, not because we're not the better team. It's just that we don't always do very well going cross-country time zones. We've very much kind of failed at really performing to our best ability in a 4 p.m. game already. I could really see us kind of like shitting the bed on this one and underperforming.
Week 4, home to the Titans.
Week 4 is a big game. This was probably a game that's going to be marked for a lot of people as Dolphins fans this year, as we lost the nail biter to the Titans last year. That would cost us the division. But I think we pull out the win on this one. That's still a very young team there that are trying to find their footing in the first month of the season.
Week 5, so help me God, you better win at New England.
Yeah, I have to give us the win in New England there. Offense is still all really young. Defense is mediocre still. I think we can pull off the win there.
That is 4-1 heading into the bye. Coming out of that, week 7 at Indy.
Yeah, this one could probably go either way. I'm still gonna lean that we can win this game here. It really will depend on what Anthony Richardson is doing. If he's performing, there's a chance we could lose this game. But if he's not, he's kind of struggling in his first full season through 7 weeks. I think we can take the win on this one pretty easily.
Week 8, home to the Cardinals.
Home game. Cardinals still a very young team that don't have a lot of weapons yet outside of Marvin Harrison and James Conner. I'm going to give us the win there.
Week 9 at Buffalo.
9. Fortunately, we're going to Buffalo. We do very poorly at Buffalo a lot of times here. I'm going to give us the loss on this one.
Week 10 at the Rams.
Again, primetime game. We have to go to Buffalo the week before, and then we have to literally go across country once again to the Rams. So I'm going to give us another loss here, unfortunately.
Week 11, home to the Raiders.
Raiders have a terrible quarterback situation right now going on. I don't really see them beating us on a toe-to-toe, so we take the win there.
And another easy one, Week 12, home to the Pats.
Yep, we've been doing pretty well against the Pats the last few seasons here. Very few times we've split over the last since the post-Tom Brady era, so I'm going to give us the win again there.
They currently sit after 12 games, 8-3. I got news for you. It's about to even up a bit if you look at the remaining games.
Yeah.
Week 13, I was like, oh man, he's going to have this team going 12-3 or whatever, 14-3. And then I looked at the rest of the schedule. Week 13 at Green Bay. You better hope they win a lot of early games.
Yeah, that's exactly what we need here. And that's what a pattern that Miami has been going through the last few years where we've won early and then failed down the stretch. So in week 13, we're going to Green Bay, Lambeau Field, probably colder conditions at that time. Miami just struggles in the cold weather. We're probably going to lose that night game there.
All right. Week 14, home to the Jets.
I think we win at home against the Jets. Again, I think that one could still be a toss-up in my head there. It really will depend if Rodgers is back. If not, I still think that we have this game here at home at least.
Week 15 at Houston.
I'm going to say loss. I hate to say that. If we were home, I think I'd feel differently, but we're on the road in this game. Houston's a very good up-and-coming team. They have a very strong defense already, and if that offense just kind of stays on course, I don't know if we have it on them, unfortunately.
Yeah, there's a lot of firepower there. Week 16, toughest one of the season probably. Home game, but it's the Niners.
Yeah, home game. Love to see that, but I still think we falter to the 49ers. I think they're just a better overall team here, and we know Kyle Shanahan knows Mike McDaniel's system very well. Very similar system to some extent. I think they're going to figure us out in that game, and we'll probably end up losing that one.
Yeah, that's a tough one. Week 17 at Cleveland. Another tough one. Probably not as tough, but it's on the road in what I guarantee is going to be a shitty, cold environment.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be. Definitely going to be a tough game. Like I said, we mentioned we're not really good against cold weather, but I don't think their offense is as dominant as Green Bay's is, and I think we can pull off the win there. It's going to be close, but it's not going to be an easy win.
I think out of all the ones you've done, that's the first one I disagreed with.
That's fair.
But 10-6, you finish it off week 18 at the Jets.
I think we split with the Jets. Honestly, we usually do split with the Jets a lot of times. Unfortunately, I think we lose at home, which will cost us probably like the 6th seed, which will end up being like the 7th seed or something like that. So we'll probably lose that one.
Well, that brings you to a 10-7 Jets season, which right now, according to the analyst, is good for third last in the NFL because every NFL team is going to win 12 games this year. So at least we're relatively reasonable here. Thank you for joining me, Coach. Before we get out of here, take another second here, plug everything, tell us where we can find you.
Absolutely, guys. So if you want to find any of my work, whether it's with the fantasy coaches doing podcasts or with Dynasty Nerds doing rating contact, you can find all my work over on Twitter at Coach Stephen P.
All right. Well, thank you, Coach, for joining me. Check back tomorrow. We have Dave Heilman of SGPN doing the Colts. So thank you to Coach for joining me. Thank you, everyone who tuned in. Check out all the team previews over at fantasyfootballuniverse.com. Take care, and we'll see you next time.